Coming up, get vaccinated or get tested. Why August will be the most important month in Belize's war against COVID-19.
You're listening to Brent's 2 Cents, the semi-serious thoughts of a guy in Belize. And now here's the host of this podcast from somewhere in Belize City, Brent Toombs.
Hey, welcome to the podcast for the week of August the 2nd. And I guess I should say welcome to Belize's third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the Ministry of Health and Wellness might not be officially declaring a third wave emergency just yet, but the minister has begun to use those words, third wave, at least in between his numerous photo opportunities on Facebook. Belize recorded 883 new cases of COVID-19 in the month of July. Yes, 883. And that number doesn't even include however many cases were recorded on Saturday, July 31st, because that information won't even be released until sometime late on Tuesday, August the 3rd. Belize hasn't seen this many new infections in 1 month since January. 8 Belizeans also lost their lives from COVID-19 last month. The government response, besides slightly extending the curfew hours, has been to aggressively push their campaign to encourage Belizeans to get vaccinated, which of course includes the very controversial decision to make it the law that frontline workers either get vaccinated or submit to testing at their own expense every 14 days. And that's what will make August 2021 the defining month in Belize's war on COVID-19. The government of Belize has delivered an ultimatum to tens of thousands of food handlers, tour guides, call center employees, transportation workers, police officers, soldiers, immigration and customs officers, civil aviation workers, teachers, and healthcare professionals. They either have to get vaccinated, get tested, or get a new job. Since SI 74 was signed into effect on July 2nd, 45,000 additional Belizeans have received at least their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Many likely in response to the threat from GOB. And that's why, starting this week, it's critically important that the government of Belize show that SI 74 was not just another well-intentioned regulation that authorities will have no will or interest in enforcing. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say the response by GOB in the next few days could be the difference between victory or defeat in the war on COVID-19. This could be government's D-Day, but it could also just as easily be its Waterloo. Belize is the home of the 9-day wonder when it comes to legislation. Any legislation. Even something as simple as restrictions on how dark you can tint your car windows only seems to be enforced for a very short time in Belize. People know this. They expect that police or whatever authority is responsible won't enforce the rules once we start to complain loudly enough, or even if we just simply ignore the rules that we don't like. And there's never any real consequences for non-compliance of just about any regulation, because enforcement of laws and regulations is selective at best, and too often, non-existent. So in many ways, it's remarkable that so many people in Belize actually stood in line this past month to get vaccinated ahead of the August 1st deadline. It says to me that a lot of people actually think GOB will carry through with enforcement, at least this time. And while it should be no surprise that hustlers inside the health system would be selling fake vaccine certificates, the fact that people are willing to shell out $300 for one is an indication that they don't think that SI 74 will blow over like a lee breeze, and that the policy of get vaxxed, get tested, or get a new job will just be another 9-day wonder in Belize. So Minister Shabat, Minister Musa, Commissioner Williams, and even Prime Minister Briceño, please hear me when I say that if you do not carry through with this threat to penalize frontline workers who are unvaccinated or untested, you will be blowing the last best chance you get to implement any meaningful COVID-19 containment regulations. If Kareem Musa or Chester Williams is on TV in the next few weeks talking about the need to crack down on violators who refuse to submit vaccine certificates or test results, then they've lost. If Michelle Shabat is telling reporters in the next few weeks that the Ministry of Health and Wellness is still working on creating a COVID enforcement unit to visit businesses to verify that frontline workers are complying, he will have lost. This cannot be like the regulation prohibiting parties and social gatherings that is only selectively enforced. Just visit the Facebook page for any event planner, and you can see that plenty of Belizeans are still hosting large weddings, christenings, and even children's birthday parties. But hey, if you've got enough money to turn your backyard into a night in Paris or a princess's playground, then it seems the cops will leave you alone. And these people know they are untouchable. This cannot be like all those restaurants that continue to operate as bars and nightclubs, complete with DJs, live bands, and drink specials. It seems like nearly every week we hear from Minister Musa or Commissioner Williams that police will begin to crack down on these establishments that flagrantly disregard regulations. Except it never happens. And some of the worst offenders have no concern about promoting their events on social media, because they too know that they are untouchable. So if we don't hear, starting this very week, about people being sent home from work without pay for refusing to get vaccinated or presenting a negative COVID test, then thousands of Belizeans will also consider themselves to be untouchable. Worse than that, the Government of Belize and the Ministry of Health and Wellness will have proven themselves once and for all to be impotent. All talk and no action. And they will have abdicated their authority to lead a public that has gotten tired of regulations and restrictions. Now look, I don't want to live in a police state, but I also don't want to live in a country where a deadly virus continues to infect thousands, kills hundreds, and continues to destroy our economy. I want things to get back to normal, just as much as any Belizean does. But we are definitely into a third wave of infections now. And with the way the positivity rate is trending, it's likely only a matter of time until we see a repeat of last November and December, where over 100 cases were recorded daily, and an average of 2 Belizeans died every single day. And that was before the much more dangerous Delta variant even existed. Now, there has not been official confirmation yet that the Delta variant is present in Belize, but you would have to be a fool to believe it has not been here for a while. The Delta variant has been confirmed in 132 countries, including Mexico, so there is no reason to think that Belize doesn't have it as well, especially considering how easily it spreads. According to a recent report from the CDC, the Delta variant is as contagious as the chicken pox and the common cold. In the United States, the Delta variant is responsible for nearly all new COVID-19 cases. The good news is, vaccinations are proving to be effective against COVID-19 variants, including Delta. In fact, 97% of all people hospitalized in the United States for COVID-19 are unvaccinated. And we've seen similar evidence in Belize recently. A little less than 2 weeks ago, Dr. Andre Sosa, board chairperson for the Carl Hughesner Memorial Hospital Authority, told the media that there were 20 people admitted to hospital for COVID-19, several requiring ventilation. All 20 of those patients were unvaccinated. So that's the good news. The vaccines work. And even if they won't stop you from catching or spreading the virus, they will almost certainly protect you from serious illness, hospitalization, and death. The bad news, however, is the low vaccination rate in Belize. Currently, only 132,000 Belizeans have had at least one dose of the vaccine. which represents about 30% of the population. Initially, health experts suggested that about 70% of the population would need to be vaccinated in order to achieve what is called herd immunity. Some are now suggesting that because Delta spreads much more easily, that a vaccination rate greater than 80% could be required for herd immunity. Belize will never achieve those kinds of percentages because of our demographics. Nearly half of the population is under the age of 18 and therefore not even eligible to get vaccinated, at least not with the vaccines available locally at this time. So that's why it's so important that every single person who is eligible to get vaccinated does get vaccinated. That's why it's so important that the Ministry of Health and Wellness do more than just post hundreds of pictures to social media of Minister Shabat fist bumping with people at pop-up vaccination centers, and instead let Belizeans once again have an open dialogue with doctors and scientists who are not politically motivated. That's why it's so important that all stakeholders, including the media, develop a strategy to confront the flood of misinformation that is being spread by anti-vaxxers. And that's why now that August has arrived, it is so important that authorities enforce SI 74 without exception, starting immediately. There will be plenty of frontline workers who will try to defy the regulation requiring them to get vaccinated or get tested. These will be people who expect that enforcement efforts will be half-hearted or short-lived. Others will be people who are used to impunity because of who they are, or who they know, or who they work for. But government still holds all the cards and the big stick. They've made the law. They've used the power granted to them by the Constitution of Belize to enact a seemingly draconian legislation in the interest of public health during a crisis. But do they have the will to spend the political capital required to enforce this law? Something that will be even less popular with many people than the law itself. Because as soon as people start getting sent home and start missing paychecks, the conversation won't be about collective responsibility or why people need to get vaccinated. It will be about taking money out of people's pockets and food off of their tables. And that's a public relations war government can never win. So if SI 74 turns out to be just another attempt by GOB to bluff people into compliance, then it's over for this administration in terms of trying to regulate people into doing anything to control the spread of COVID-19 ever again.
We want to hear from you. You can find Brent's 2 Cents on Twitter and Facebook at 2 Cents Belize, or email us at podcast@oshaproductions.com. That's OXAProductions.com.
Okay, as always, it's time to big up the other Belizeans who have dropped podcasts this week. But unfortunately, there's only one to mention. It looks like a lot of our local podcasters must be taking a bit of a summer break, so hopefully all of them will be back at it real soon. But at least Andre Habet has a brand new episode of Mud of Fire. He's talking about tourism and conservation and the efforts to conserve the North Stan Creek and Mullins River. I'll put a link to that in the notes for this episode. Remember, you can be part of the podcast movement in Belize by sharing Brent's 2 Cents with at least one person who otherwise may not know about it. And don't forget to subscribe to all the great Belizean podcasts on your favorite app so you never miss an episode from any of us. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at 2 Cents Belize. And I would especially love it if you would leave a voice message for the podcast about anything you want to talk about. And that's going to do it for episode 36 of Brent's 2 Cents. Until next time, please continue to wear your masks, wash your hands, get out and get vaccinated. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. And most importantly, be nice to each other.
Brent's 2 Cents is a presentation of OSHA Productions, Belize's affordable professional video production company.